John Daniel here today in the West Orvis Street Cemetery. I've done a few videos here over the past few years, and today we are going to take a tour of some of the cemetery and the people that are buried here. The Massena Chamber of Commerce and the Massena Museum put together this booklet recently in September on the West Orvis Street Cemetery tour, and we are going to have a tour here of some of the Massena's pioneers and give a history of their lives. So let's go now and do some history. We're at the Hutchins-Riley family plot, and let's read from this little booklet put together on the history of the Hutchins-Riley family and who's buried here. Edward Hutchins, a pioneer settler of Massena, came from Vermont and settled on the St. Lawrence River. He married Hannah Lockwood, who was described as a noble woman. She was English, of small stature, and had sparkling black eyes. She was the mother of Roswell, Rosalina, James, and Caroline. Caroline, born in 1825, taught school for several years. She was engaged to a young Mr. Phillips of Massena, who died of ship's fever a short time before the day set for the wedding. She later married Daniel Riley of Louisville and was the mother of two sons, George and Daniel. Here at the Hutchins and Riley plot, where they are buried. This is the Hobson-Dennison family plot. As you can see, the stone needs to be fixed. It's been like this for several years and in need of repairs. And the town of Massena is supposed to come in eventually and restore all these stones, hopefully next year. Anyways, let's go on here with the history of the Hobson and Dennison family. Beeman Hobson, son of Abel, and Hannah Avery, daughter of Stephen Avery, a soldier in the Revolutionary War, was born August 3rd, 1818. He married Catherine Lukes, daughter of George Lukes, and they were the parents of 7 children: Richard, George, Norman, Irving, Amelia, Mary, Rowena, and Louisa. Richard was drowned in Wisconsin, and Norma married Margaret May Tracy, daughter of Dia Tracy. Amelia married Jason Dennison and went to Augusta, Wisconsin in a covered wagon, and Mary Rowena married Nathan Dennison. Beeman was always a Republican and cast his first vote for Benjamin Harris in 1840. He was an ardent temperament advocate, assessor, excise commissioner, a principal stockholder of the Massena Bank Company, and owned several large farms. The Massena Express newspaper of December 1888 contains an account of the Hobson Golden Wedding Anniversary. He was presented with a gold-headed cane, and Mrs. Hobson received gold-lined cups and saucers, a ring, and a gold-lined spoon holder. One of Massena's first settlers, Eliza Dennison, served as a school trustee, assessor, and a founder of the Masonic Lodge. His son, Nathan Dennison, born April 21st, 1840, was married to Mary Rowena, excuse my here if I mispronounce this, Rowena, and was described as a good citizen, honest, and upright, a practicing veterinarian and highway superintendent for 19 years. He married Charlotte Forsyth after Mary Rowena's death and died December 18th, 1914. We're now at the Felch-Bailey family plot, and it's in need of restoration badly. As you can see here, the stones have deteriorated pretty good over time. So let's read the Felch and Bailey family history briefly. Mary Hale Felch was the daughter of Aja Hale, a soldier in the Revolutionary War who served with Ethan Allen's Green Mountain Boys, and a sister to Nathan Hale, who was also a Revolutionary War soldier on the Lexington Alarm. Her mother, Dorcas Meade Hale, was the daughter of Colonel James Meade of Rutland, who commanded the regiment of Vermont troops during the war. She was married to the Reverend Cheever Felch, who was an Episcopalian priest, a naval chaplain during the War of 1812. He died en route home after the war, leaving his indigent with 6 small children. One of these daughters, Laura, born July 7, 1825 and died November 19, 1911, married William Bailey, born July 28, 1820, died July 11, 1894, a successful farmer who was universally respected. He was responsible for buying the town clock, and being very generous, was interested in anything that would benefit the town of Massena. He was a son of Merrill, 1772 to 1851, and Anna Moore Bailey, 1783 to 1856, and served on the board of assessors for many years, as well as being the superintendent of the Methodist Episcopal Sunday School. This is the Ormsby family plot, and let's read here about the family. Peter Ormsby, born 1800, died April 28, 1872, was the son of Samuel and Hannah of Vermont. He was married 3 times, first to Sally Haggett, who died in 1833 with 5 children. Eliza Tracy died in 1855. They had 5 children. And Mrs. Chamberlain, who was buried at Chamberlain's Corner in Madrid. A son, Amos, born October 6, 1843, died on February 5, 1930, and served in the 92 New York Volunteer Regiment of the Civil War for 3 years and 2 months. He was in the battle at Fair Oaks and was in the hospital for 9 months. Returned to his farm of over 100 acres to breed horses, he was a Republican, overseer of the poor, and a member of the Grand Army Republic Party in the Grange. He was married to Jeanette Ferguson of Canada and had a son who died October 24th, turn the page here, 1873, at the age of 5 months. His brother, Samuel Ormsby, born September 4th, 1836, and died April 6, 1905, served in the 50th Regiment New York Volunteers in the Civil War. This is the Tracy family plot here with numerous stones. Some have been, well, replaced. The Tracy family was in Massena for years. And you can see 3 stones here, the originals, and they replaced them with markers. And then the rest of the family is in this area. Let's read a little about the Tracy family, which could be a book, too. Samuel Tracy was born in 1789 in Windham, Connecticut. He came to Massena in 1816 and purchased 73 acres of land. In 1819, he was assessed for 10 acres of improved land and 63 unimproved, for which he paid $1.03 in taxes. He returned to Connecticut for his family and brought them to Massena with a span of horses and a wagon, which is said to have been the only one in Massena at the time. He was married to Theda Snow of Becket, Massachusetts, and their 10 children were Kingsley, Daniel, Edward, and Flavia. Let's see, also we have Eunice, Eliza, Mrs. Peter Ormsby, Cybele, Dia, Sarah Grant, Harriet Cross, Lydia, and Samuel. Samuel Tracy was a trustee of the First Congregational Church at Massena Center. In 1833, contracted with Benjamin Phillips to build the Second Congregational Church, which is now the Massena Chamber of Commerce office and is one of the oldest standing buildings left in Massena. We're at the Ransom family and Patterson family plots. The stones look pretty good for their age, and they're still fairly decent. Let's read the history here of some of the history of this family. Erasmus Darwin Ransom, born December 22nd, 1813, died July 28th, 1852, killed in a runaway carriage accident that left his wife, Weltha Parker, with 4 children and a baby. Pretty sad. He was the son of Amos Ransom, 1785 to 1868, and Dolly Eldridge. Amos was a druggist at the corner of Andrews and Church Streets. His second wife was Grace Nevin, who was buried in the Nevin Cemetery. Amos attempted to develop water power at the Racket River by building a dam and was the first postmaster there in 1830. Erasmus was the town clerk in 1841, town supervisor in 1845, and a member of the Plank Road Company in 1851. His wife, Weltha's children were Darwin, a lawyer in New York City, killed in a railroad accident. Lucius, born February 13th, 1844, died August 8th, 1850, at the age of 6 from diphtheria, if I pronounced that right. Ellen, 1846 to 1922, a graduate Albany Normal, teacher and principal for many years, and Frank, born October 10th, 1841, died September 12th, 1911. Another daughter here, Annie Ransom, married John Patterson and died February 16th, 1881, at the age of 27 when giving birth to her child. Her child, Andy Patterson, was raised by the grandmother and aunts and attended private schools and graduated from Clarkson University and married Edward Crosby in 1904. And they're all buried here in different areas. Jesse Ransom, 1849 to 1920, another of Erasmus and Weltha's, gave piano lessons and was employed in the post office when her uncle Henry Ransom was postmaster. She married Mr. Guttison and lived in the West for a short while until her death, and then returned home here to Massena. She and Ellen were interested in the welfare of their church, the library, and the community. This is the Snaith family plot. John and Anna Snaith came from England to Montreal, where they very soon afterwards died. Their 3 sons, Frank, George, and William, were bound out, but Frank, who died December 7th, 1865, ran away to New Bedford, Massachusetts, and worked on the whaling vessels for several years. He went to Prescott, Ontario, and married Jane Home from Scotland. A daughter, Emma, 1855 to 1856, is buried with him here on this plot. His brother, George, who grew up in Montreal, then came to Massena to continue the operation of the tin shop and hardware store Frank had established in the area, where Cape Air Travel is now located in downtown Massena. Frank's son, George, married Mary Britton and became a druggist at the Stearns and Snaith store. He was a clerk and merchant for 65 years, a village trustee, a town collector, a prominent Republican, and a member of the Massena First Baptist Church. This is the Taylor family area where the Taylor family's buried, at least some of them, and it's looking pretty bad. It's in rough shape. The stones are all broken up. So let's read a little history here briefly of the Taylor family buried here. Reuel Taylor died November 6, 1849 at age 64. He was married to Elmira Wells, died 1861 at 42 years old, 3 months, 27 days. Daughter of Reuben Wells, 1752 to 1815, a Revolutionary War veteran and experienced severance. He built the Harrogate House at Massena Springs, where Romeo's liquor store is now located, for his sons, Parsons, and part of Springs Park. He's buried nearby. Oh, they're buried nearby are Henrietta, died June 2nd, 1841, aged 3 years, 27 days. A daughter, 3 years, and his son Parsons, who died June 11th, 1848. They're right here at this plot. Ransom's the next. We're at number 9 of our tour, and this is the Klein family plot. Robert Klein, born 1846, died 1935, on Long Salt, S.O., whatever that means in this pamphlet, John and Anna Farlinger Klein. He came to Massena at age 17 and took up the blacksmith's trade. After a 3-year apprenticeship with Horatio Clark, built a shop in the corner of Main and Water Street, and another in Louisville. He also built a large house on the corner of Maple Street in Maine. He was married twice, the first to Catherine Bush, 1842 to 1875, and secondly to Doris Bowles, 1852 to 1925. A son, Albert, 1874 to 1935, is buried here with them. He was an ardent worker at the Methodist Episcopal Church, a trustee and Sunday school teacher. He was also a renowned fisherman and guide. His grandfather George came from Canada in 1800 and built a shack where a Klopman store is now in downtown Massena. He cut timber and floated into Montreal as the area was fully wooded. He had 3 sons, and they built and owned the first boat to run between Massena and Ogdensburg. It was considered to be quite a privilege to be invited by one of the Klein boys to go to Ogdensburg on the sailboat to bring back goods for local merchants. We're now at the Garvin, Freeman, and Hurlbut plot. This stone here at the top is William S. P. Garvin, who was a Civil War veteran, and the Henry family took care of him before he died a few years. He died in 1914 on a personal note. So let's get back here and read from the booklet. William S. P. Garvin was born in Massena, August 2nd, 1826, died 1914. John Garvin came to Massena from Massachusetts after the War of 1812, which is his descendant, of course. He attended the first school on the corner of East Orvis Street and Center Street. His father was a contractor and a builder, and he followed in the same business. Mr. Garvin erected the First Baptist Church, the Bailey and Potter stores, the Clary House, and part of the old Massena High School building on Main Street. He also built the Grand Trunk Station at Prescott, Ontario. At the outbreak of the Civil War, he entered the service as a captain of the Company 142nd New York Volunteers and served through the war. When President Lincoln was assassinated, he was in Raleigh, North Carolina with General Sherman. His corpse having been south to join the famous general after his march to the sea when he was returning to intercept Johnston to prevent him from joining Robert E. Lee. He was mustered out as a major and returned to Massena, where in 1866 he was appointed Collector of Customs for the Port of Massena and held the position for 21 years. In 1887, he took charge of the coal business for J.L. Hyde. During the war, Elizabeth Freeman Garvin, born May 6, 1831 and died July 26, 1909, his wife, daughter of George and Susan Freeman, had a select school in her house while her husband was serving in the Union Army. Probably had school keeping was not a lucrative undertaking, and she had a difficult time balancing her budget, and the local grocer seized her parlor organ for payment of her debts. When Mr. Garvin returned home from the war, he redeemed the organ from Mrs. Garvin and was unable to forget her humiliation, and she never attended another church day on Sundays. But her husband attended the church. Henry Augusta Freeman died April 7th, 1828, age 15 months. And on the stone it says, "The fades a lovely flower, frail solace of an hour." Susan Hurlbut was the widow of George Freeman, widow of Rodney, and daughter of Rachel Broughton Malone, born in Vermont on October 14th, 1800, and died in April 13th, 1879. Rodney served in Captain Benjamin Williams' company, New York Militia, during the War of 1812. This is the Orvis Emerson Walden plot. This big stone at the top is Colonel U.H. Orvis, who was a big pioneer in this town. And let's read a little history here. It's actually a long one, but we'll get going here. Colonel Uriah H. Orvis, born 1785. By 1817, he had amassed a great amount of property here in Massena. In 1818, with J.B. Phillips, he started a mercantile business in conjunction with John Andrews, Benjamin Phillips, and James Stedman. In 1825, he was a trustee in the First Congregational Church. And in 1827, he erected a building for the Baptists on land later given to them by Mrs. Orvis. After the death of his first wife, Nancy Boynton, her body is in Massena Center Cemetery. He donated land for the West Orvis Street Cemetery. Right here, this whole cemetery, he donated land. That same year, he purchased mills located on Water Street. In 1830, built a stone mill with 3 runs of stone, which later turned into a woolen mill, where the Slavin's mill is now. He also operated a lime kiln and tannery on the corner of North Main Street and Center. He was president of the corporation to build plank roads, and in 1851-1852 was president of the County Agricultural Society. Laura Limes Emerson was his second wife. His parents being Cement Dyke, no dates on the stone, related to Sir Francis Dyke, a famous English explorer, and William Emerson. Left time, June 7th, 1846, related to Ralph Waldo Emerson. Orvis died June 24th, 1854, at the age of 69 years, as it says in this stone. And Laura died April 27th, 1880, at the age of 81. Nearby here is our David, a son, died October 23rd, 1848, age 23. An unknown Orvis, son and daughter Frances, died 1817, 1829, age 2 years. And Uriah, must be Uriah Jr., April 13th, 1821, age 3. And is on a stone that says, "Happy in its infants only bless rest in peaceful slumber. Early rescued from the cares which no delights their worth theirs say." Daughter, Laura E., wife of Joseph Clary, died October 27th, 1844, age 19. And on a stone it says, "Be ye also ready, so fares the lovely bloom flower." Martha Emerson, daughter. And William, the first burial in the cemetery, was here in 1829, age 19. The last plot is that of Reverend G. Walden, a Presbyterian Baptist minister who was the pastor at the local Baptist church when the cornerstone was laid. And he died September 29th, 1867, at age 56. Mary Clarissa died April 28, 1843, age 1 year. J. Orvis Walden, a Civil War soldier, died in a rebel prison November 1861 at age 20, and he's buried here. And Clarissa L. Emerson Walden died June 25th, 1851, age 39, sister of Martha and Laura Limes Orvis. This is the Kingsley family plot, these two stones. Abigail Story, born in Massachusetts, wife of Eliza Kingsley, died December 7th, 1880, at age 93. Eliza Kingsley died 1844, age 81 years. He was born in Vermont and is a Revolutionary War veteran, right here. This is the Hubbard family plot, and right here is Calvert Hubbard, died April 21st, 1856, age 82 years, and his wife Betsy. Calvin, with Stephen Reed, built a sawmill and dam in 1803, and the first grist mill in Massena in 1808. He was the first postmaster in 1811 and town supervisor in 1812. He lived on Glen Street in here in Massena and was a licensed innkeeper from 1803 to 1811. This is the Joy family plot. Pretty good size. This plot here. A series of 10 plots of members of the Joy family are buried here. Very early in the history of Massena. And we gotta go on here if I can read it. Massena Joy died November 8th, 1858, age 81. Came with his wife Anna, died October 1853, age 73, and brother from Hingham, Massachusetts. The sons of Massena were Francis, died August 20th, 1870, age 67, and Silas, died December 9th, 1804. The former commissioner was the former commissioner of highways in 1838. Silas was postmaster from 1849 to 1853 and a trustee of the Second Congregational Church in 1844. He built a brick block on the west side of Main Street and rented it out. His wife was Melinda, born September 24th, 1805. Died June 19th, 1895. Who has been described as a little woman who knew how to make 1 penny do the work of 3. She tapped the maple tree in front of her home, and besides all the usual work of making butter, curing meats, making soaps, and other things, she found time to kilt lovely linen bedspreads. Buried with Silas and Melinda are 2 children, John, born November 12, 1839, died May 25, 1842, age 2, and Francis, born July 16, 1843, died April 18, 1844, age 9 months. Another grave that is here is of Felicia Joy, who died February 17, 1877, in her 79th year. And the relationship is unknown in this booklet. Silas and Melinda had 2 sons, Henry S. and Charles. Henry was one of the signers of the call for a school meeting to consolidate 3 districts for the establishment of the Union Free School in Massena. Other graves here are Horrence, S-O-H-S, Little Georgie, S-O-H-S, and Francis N. and John Joy. Felicia Joy died February 17, 1887, in her 79th year. She was born in 1806 in Vermont and married Levi Joy, 1820 to 1879. See, she was a tailoress and he was a clotherer. Next here we have Squire Enos Beach. Was born in Windsor, Vermont, April 7th, 1803, and moved with his parents, Eli, in Hepsera, Smed Beach, into Canada near Brockville, Ontario, in 1812, before the war. During the War of 1812, his father was drafted into the British service, but escaped. Was arrested and imprisoned in the Black Hole for 4 days, with no food except what he obtained by bribing the keepers, and fled the second time around across the St. Lawrence River. His wife and children followed in December 1814, but in the crossing, the boat capsized, and they were compelled to ride in wet clothes during the cold winter 3 miles to Morristown. Enos married Diana Atwood, December 25th, 1832, after teaching school for several years, and moved to Massena. He was a cabinet maker and is self-described as a short-looking old man with a white, long beard who used to walk through the streets with his daughter, Ardville. He was a trustee of the Unitarian Universal Church and had a strict adherence to justice. A man of liberal views and generous impulses, he enjoyed the universal esteem of his community where he lived. He died August 17th, 1893. His mother, age 86, and 2 children, Emma, died June 4th, 1851, and daughter Laura, 12 years old, October 10th, 1842, are buried right here near him where this tree is. This is the Ransom family and Dutton family plot. Dr. Amos Ransom was born in 1787, died June 25th, 1868, aged 81 years, And on a stone it says, "Asleep in Jesus." The S.O. Jabel and Chloe Ransom. He married Dolly Eldridge, and after her death, married Grace Nevin. He built a house on the corner of Andrews and Church Street, where Nettles is now, and operated the drugstore. His son, John Eldridge, was a carpenter and worked on many houses before going south, and sympathizing with his associates, became a Confederate soldier. A second son, Henry Sawyer Ransom, born August 21st, 1823, died February 13th, 1897. Married Elmira S. Burpee, born April 20th, 1826, died April 27th, 1902. She was the daughter of Spahark and Persa Sanks Burpee. Spahark was a War of 1812 veteran and is buried in Massena Center Cemetery. Henry was postmaster from 1861 to 1866 in Massena, town supervisor in 1865, and town clerk in 1868, 1871, and 1872. He was also a businessman with John O. Bridges, Hyde and his son-in-law, Alfred W. Dutton, 1855 to 1938, who married his daughter Fanny, 1859 to 1920. Alfred and Fanny had 3 children, one of whom, Sidney, 1892 to 1901, is buried here with them. This is the Fowler family plot. Lucius Fowler, 1832 to 1907. Mary E. Wheels Fowler, 1837 to 1902. Lucius was a native of Grinstone Island, but at the age of 4 was taken into the home of Silas Joy. He was in the cattle and stock buying business, buying largely for city markets, while he conducted a retail butcher shop in Massena. He was tall and a generous man. They were described as a well-to-do family, attractive and happy. In 1894, he was appointed to be a special constable to enforce no ball playing in the streets, no discharge of firearms, and no use of any gambling devices at any time in Massena. This is the Phillips family plot, which is inside here, this area where the metal fence is. This is the only remaining metal fence left in the cemetery here in West Orvis Street that has survived all this time. One time there were fences around other plots, but they're long gone. And his family goes out that way on the side and over there. Benjamin Phillips was born in Canada in 1796 and died April 29th, 1865. In 1819, he was assessed for a village lot, house and barn. By 1837, he had acquired about 700 acres, 3 village lots, houses, stores, and barns. In 1848, he erected the United States Hotel at Massena Springs. It was a 3-story brick structure capable of accompanying 200 guests and was operated with the Rule Taylor and Harrogate House in the opposite corner. Operating for 23 years, it burned in 1871. He was in the general merchandise business and also interested in the lumber industry. Elijah Dennison piloted rafts of logs to Montreal for him. He was town supervisor from 1840 to 1841 and was a trustee of the First Congregational Church and instrumental in the organization of the Second Congregational Church. He was married to Electa Boyton, died February 25th, 1866, age 70, who was a sister to Nancy. The first Mrs. Orvis and Susan Mrs. John Andrews. They were the parents of 5 children. Allen married Charlotte, died July 19th, 1849, and is buried in this plot. Right here is the Pauley family plot. Some of the Pauley family's buried here, and over there there's more Pauleys. Let's read this. This is some of the Pauley family history, at least right here in this section. Henry Pauley's right there in that stone we can't see, and the other ones here hardly recognizable right this moment. Joseph Pauley came from Chester, Vermont to Massena around 1800. He was born December 25th, 1756. And records show he enlisted February 10th, 1777 in the Revolutionary War for 3 years. He was appointed as a drummer that year and was discharged April 10th, 1780. He is buried in the cemetery with his second wife Eunice, who died July 4th, 1831. He was the father of 5 sons: Amos, John, William, Varnum, and Eben. John was a second lieutenant in the 4th U.S. Regiment in the War of 1812. He was wounded by an explosion of a shell on September 10th, 1814 at the siege of Fort Erie and was discharged June 15th, 1815. Captain John, as he was locally known, was the builder of the first hotel at Massena Springs, known then as the Smith House and now known as the vacant Massena Springs Tavern. He died June 16th, 1866 at the age of 84 years and is buried with his wife Betsy, who died September 24th, 1865 at age 80 years. Amos Pauley, who died February 5th, 1883, age 85, 6 months, 27 days, is buried with his wife Dorothy Alt from Altsville, Canada, who died March 3rd, 1844 at age 42. Their 2 children, George, died April 3rd, 1853 at age 29, and Miranda died May 20th, 1850, age 20 years, are also buried there, as is the Amos brother, Varnum, who died January 20th, 1844 at age 43 years. This is the Clark family plot. The stone is currently down. It's been like this for a few years. And let's read a history of some of the Clark family from Massena. Henry W. Clark, 1826 to 1912. Cordelia L. Simmons, wife, 1835 to 1914. Walter L. Clark, son, 1853 to 1883. Joseph Clark, born 1797, came to Massena in 1820. He and his wife Mary built a home on the corner of Main and Andrew Street, where the Central Building is today. Actually, this is out of date. The Central Building is actually where the fitness center is in the corner, and the dance studio at this time in 2014. He built the Old Stone Store next door on Main Street and operated it with Colonel Orvis. And the Old Stone Store is long gone, though. It was customary for merchants to take grain in exchange for the goods, and the second story of the building was used as a storage place for grain. There was a large wooden addition at the rear of the store In a smaller addition in the north side, known as the Salt Room, they had 3 sons, Horrence, Horatio, and Henry W. Henry W. enlisted in the 106th Regiment, New York Volunteers, as an adjunct to Colonel James of Ogdensburg. He served for 2 years in the Civil War and returned home as a lieutenant. He was described as a fine-looking man who always retained his military bearing. For many years, he owned and operated the sash and door factory and a sawmill business, and served twice as the Massena town clerk. His brother Horatio ran a blacksmith shop and foundry at the corner of Main and Water Street, where the vacant aluminum Slavens building is today. We're now at the Cubley family plot, and it's in need of repairs, like the whole entire cemetery. Cubley, William H. Cubley, 1833 to 1898. Martha, his wife, 1835 to 1893, wealthy. His mother, 1795 to 1881, and, excuse this pronunciation if I pronounce it right, Minerva, his second wife, 1849 to 1828. William Cubley was born in Windsor, Vermont, and came to Massena at a young age. At the age of 20, he set out in himself as a carpenter apprentice for 10 years. In 1865, he began business as a real estate broker, furniture manufacturer, dealer, and undertaker, erecting the several buildings on the lot south of the old White's Hotel on Main Street. In fact, I live in the building location where the Cubleys erected all their buildings in downtown. He manufactured hearses. A built-in carriage hearse at the Massena Museum was made by him in the 1860s. This is the Cooper family plot. This stone here and this one. Crawford Cooper, born February 16th, 1812, died December 15th, 1886. Jane, Ruel, wife, died November 9th, 1869, at age 54. Lucy, a daughter, born May 22nd, 1853, died October 4th, 1882. Crawford did not follow the trade indicated by his mane, but was a shoemaker, much opposed to the extension of the Grand Trunk Railroad from Fort Covington to Massena, as the tracks came near his house and cut the lot into 2 strips, which he felt ruined his farm. He was one of the founders of the Methodist Episcopal Church at the Racket Point. This is the Judd family plot, and this is Mary Ann, who died in 1853. I'm going to turn the camera over this way to the rest of the Judd family plot, and let's start more of the tour. Gideon Judd, buried in this location with his wife, came to Massena from Rutland, Vermont, about 1820, bringing his wife, 4 sons, and 3 daughters with him in an ox cart. He bought land that had been assessed to Uriah Orvis the previous year. His first task was to clear his land so that trees were cut and burned into huge piles. The ashes of black salts were taken to Hogansburg with mules, and the money obtained paid for the land. It appears he had a general store and did training for his neighbors on his trips to Hogansburg. His sons were named Simeon, Norman, John B., and Silavanus. Hopefully that's pronounced right. John was the first school commissioner in 1836 to 1838, a trustee of the Second Congregational Church, and town supervisor 1838 to 1839. Simeon's first wife was Fanny Livingston, born January 7, 1811, died April 25, 1848. Beside her grave are two with no record and a third with no name. Norman, 1816 and 1901, married 3 times. First wife was Mary Ann, died June 8, 1853 at age 63. Daughter Elisa died March 18, 1854, is buried with her. Caroline died September 14, 1859. The next grave holds her 2 sons, George, who died on August 31st, 1865 at age 23, and Royal, who died March 16, 1862 at age 5. She also had 2 daughters. Miss Newton was the 3rd wife and is not buried here in this cemetery. We're now at the Nightingale family plot. Moses Nightingale died November 21st, 1883, age 87. William, 1754 and 1840, and Susan, 1765 and 1829, are buried at Massena Center Cemetery. His wife, Sally Reed, was the D.O. Stephen Reed, and Polly Ackley, who died April 22nd, 1874, at age 72. Moses built a large brick house on the north side of West Hatfield about 1830 and was in possession of that branch of the family until about 1900, when it was sold to the Massena Improvement Company. For a time, it was used as a sanitarium for the patients of Mr. Quinlan, a magnetic healer, who claimed to have great healing powers in his hands and attempted to cure various diseases by massage and manipulation. Also, Abigail Nightingale, D.O. Moses, and Sally died July 11th, 1877 at age 45. And Harvey, S.O. Moses, son of, and Sally died June 10th, 1842, aged 9 years. The daughter Elizabeth married Barney C. Woodward. A short distance away lies the graves of William Nightingale, Moses' brother, 1782 to 1872, and his wife, 1799 to 1865, their son William E., 1831 to 1904, and his wife Olivia, 1825 to 1898. 2 unmarried daughters, Florence E., 1861 to 1888, and Eva, 1864 to 1885. This William also built a very large home on West Hatfield Street, which became a tavern known as the House of William Nightingale. The ballroom extended across the whole front of the house, and this room were to gather people from all over the North Country, even from Montreal. It became noted for its good beds and its excellent meals, for preparing wholesome and satisfying food. Stagecoaches brought travelers to drink the spring water. Iron smugglers met to discuss ways of transporting metal, but the lengthy and lively balls were the main events. They began mid-afternoon, dancing the fiddlers and a bass player, shared an early supper. Later at midnight, supper, at which time all the ladies changed in more colorful clothing. They then danced until breakfast was served in the morning. The tavern was operated until 1850, until his sons William and Henry told him they would leave home unless he discontinued the sale of liquor. The balls continued until 1887, but when the tavern ceased, Mr. Nightingale gave more attention to his farming. This is the Crawley family plot, or I hopefully pronounced her last name right, Crowley, and Babcock plot. And I'm going to turn the camera here over to the Babcock plot right here, and we'll film from this point and read about the Babcock family and the Crowley family. Royal Crowley, 1838 to 1898, and his wife Julia Crowley, 1835 to 1924, and her son Samuel Crowley, 1863 to 1935, and his wife Jessie Waterbury, 1855 to 1924. Samuel, at age 21, went to Augusta, Wisconsin in order to learn butter making. He returned home to Massena and got a job as a butter maker with the old Diamond Creamery. He later was the receiver weighing milk brought in by farmers for 28 years. Also worked at Alcoa and was a member of the Methodist Church in the Oddfellows. The next plot is that of Edna Crowley. It says D.O. Royally, 1871 to 1926, and her husband Fred L. Babcock, 1871 to 1926. Edna became a teacher and worked as a postmistress for 18 years. She was a great campaigner for women's suffrage and belonged to the WCTU. Fred had a grocery post office at Massena Springs, where Romeo's liquor store is now located. He was known as the meanest man in town. Children constantly played tricks on him, and he was in constant contact with the police, but they never came. He never cheated or tried to hurt anyone, and he was once overheard to say, "I know these kids, and there is not a bad one in the bunch." On Armistice Day, at the end of the war, the kids had a brass band and played to torment him. He came out with an American flag and said, "Come on in, boys. The treats are on me. As much as ice cream as you can eat." Hope you enjoyed that, Mr. Babcock, that story into history, wherever he is. Well, this concludes the tour for the West Orvis Street Cemetery. I hope you've enjoyed, and thank you for watching.